Hello and welcome to the Supercharge Your Sales Velocity podcast, the show where I help you drive more opportunities, bigger deals and faster wins. I'm Fergal Carroll, and today I'm really excited to chat with a special guest, Angel Evenson. Angel is the founder of AKA Communications and a seasoned business and leadership coach who's all about helping businesses turbocharge their growth. She brings a storyteller's mindset to sales, which makes sense because beyond her work in fractional sales leadership and coaching, she's also a published writer. Her latest children's book, Fox and Goose Make a Friend, became a TikTok sensation, racking up over 10 million views and selling thousands of copies worldwide. A real testament to her ability to create compelling stories that resonate. Angel, you are very welcome to the show.
Thanks, Fergal. It's a pleasure to be here.
Angel, I thought it'd be great to go back a little bit in your career. And I want to mention something that I think is happening to a few people these days. And you've gone through it and come out the other side. And that is, you were in a permanent role. You're probably gone 7-8 years in a career progression. You were getting more senior. And then almost probably from left field, you found yourself without a job. Could you give me a sense of what your life was like back then and the kind of decisions that you had to make and how you've come through the other side?
Yeah, and it's funny you asked that because it happened not only once, but twice. But the first time specifically, you're not prepared for it mentally. You have, in essence, a lot of the time, we tie ourselves and our worth to what our title is and what we do on a daily basis, and it gives us purpose. And so when that's all of a sudden just ripped away from you,
Just take it away from you. Yeah.
yeah, it's really hard for you to get up in the morning and believe that what I'm doing is valuable. And when your full-time job becomes finding a full-time job, it's exhausting. And it's the worst full-time job, searching for a job. And so it's difficult. And the first time that I faced it, it was the most strain I've ever had on my mental health at that time in my life, because I was younger and it was my first experience with it. And I was doing really well in my career and I did not see it coming. And so it came out of left field, and you start to, self-analyze and try to figure out, well, why am I in this situation, and try to change things for the future while also challenging yourself to get back out there and tell your story and get back into a role. And sometimes we do that too quickly. We don't take enough time to sit there and analyze, well, what is it that I really want? Now that I'm given this opportunity, what is it that I want? And because I had experienced that one time and then experienced it a second time, the second time I experienced it, I sat there and really did that. And I said, well, this is happening. What do I want to make of it? And that shift, just that quick shift in my mindset was like, I can be in control of what happens next.
It sounds like you wanted to exactly take control, not have it happen to you, but you
Right.
could actually take control of the situation. Obviously, looking at where you are today, you made a decision back then in one of the or two occasions to decide to go out on your own. Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah. So after the first time, I lucked out a little bit because when I was laid off that first time, I had built a side hustle at that time a couple years prior because I wanted to be a little bit more creative. And that actually saved me because I poured a little bit of myself into that and did that while I was job searching, which kind of filled my bucket a little bit and made me feel like I was actually making progress and doing something that I liked. And so then I just kept building that and kept that alongside of my career, even when I got back into my career.
So it was almost your plan B without thinking of it as a plan B, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And when you got into that, whatever that was it a slow burner, or did it? When you decided to give it, I'm assuming at some point you decided, right, I'm giving 100% to this now. I've
Yeah.
Did you consciously say I've left behind now that permanent career type role?
Yeah, I would say it was definitely a slow burn because in my mind, it was the best of both worlds. I was able to have this creative outlet on the side, and at that point, it was such a creative outlet that I didn't really want to do that specific thing full time. So I was like, this is just a bonus. I get all of this money to like fun vacations and do fun things with. And then I have my career where I'm building this track record that maybe I'll do something with later. And so my business evolved over those many years and transitioned into what it is today. And this is what I want to be doing versus that initial creative outlet.
And so tell us, what are you doing today?
Yes. So today I do a mixture of consulting and some coaching. I run workshops with leaders. Really, my goal is to help founders get out of founder led sales. So, creating systems so that they can then, yes, be that PR seat and still drive leads to their business, but really get out of that founder led grind that they're at the scale, ready to scale.
So you're dealing now with founders quite a bit, right? So what are the common themes that you must be seeing them over and over again with these founders? What's coming up?
Yeah, man, so many things. Finding really good talent is obviously really hard, but one of the main things is they are really good at their business. They're really good at selling their business. They're not the best at creating the systems to get them to the point of scaling. And so, helping them build those systems and processes and coming alongside them to really take what they're already doing and just make it something that's sustainable, that people can take over for them, and putting them in a seat where they're really enjoying what they're doing again instead of them sitting in this grind every day. That would be like the main struggle that I see, because they get to this point of burnout and they almost get to the point where they're like, why am I doing this anymore? Why I don't even really enjoy my business. This is not why I created my business. And so those systems end up helping them step out of the things that they're really not enjoying anymore.
I actually call their role the chief hustle officer,
Yeah.
because they're just doing everything, right? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, work-life balance goes out the window, and they just get sucked into almost endless work, weekends,
Yes.
you name it, right? So what specifically are you helping them with? So I'm a founder. Let's say my company is a couple of years in and it's getting mature. I'm probably still under the million or so revenue. What would you be
Mhm.
suggesting to me there?
Yeah. So at that point, what I usually recommend is that they start actually documenting their sales process. Most of them don't, but they have a sales process. They just don't have it
It's
documented.
it's
And
in
they're
their head, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
because they're the
Okay.
ones leading it. So they're
Mm.
like, "Well, this is what happens, this is what happens, this is what happens." But when you're getting to that point of almost having 1,000,000 in revenue, you're needing to create these processes so that you can step out of that seat.
But you've no time, right? That's your problem. They're hustling. They don't have the time to do it, so they don't do it. Is that what you're
Exactly.
saying?
And to
Okay.
them, it's not a priority, or it doesn't seem like a
Mm.
priority because their time is sucked up, and they're just like, "Well, we'll get to that point." But if they just document it while they're doing it, then they partner with either their executive assistant or somebody that's in operational seat within their business. They can help them streamline it and at least put it into some sort of document so that they have a process for when they're ready to bring somebody in to help them. And one way that a lot of founders go wrong is they bring in a salesperson to just like take over that stuff instead of thinking through the processing first and the operations first. And again, a lot of that's in their head already. It's just really getting it down and being able to implement it.
And Angel, it sounds to me they're almost treating it like outsourcing sales. I know it's within the same company, right? But they think let's hire an individual or two in, and I can essentially give them sales while I can get back to what a CEO or founder should be doing. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, definitely. And a lot of people look at bringing in a salesperson into their business as a godsend. Like, this is going to help me so much. But when they haven't done that pre work before bringing in anybody that's in a sales seat or a sales leadership seat, they're only doing themselves and them a disservice because it's going to be like a churn and burn thing with those salespeople.
And we see a lot of that, don't we? See salespeople coming in, lasting 3, 6 months, and then they're out, and then another one, and so on. I mean, I've always felt that the CEO has, or a founder, we'll call the founder, they have a really interesting story, a backstory, because obviously they founded the company, they've hired some extra sales help, but those people that they've hired as sales BDOs or whatever it might be, they don't have the same backstory, and they cannot replicate what the founder can deliver in a sales environment. But yet, if the founder has outsourced sales, they're losing that, aren't they? There's a gap then, because that fantastic backstory and their reason, their mission, or whatever it is for their business, they have to kind of push it on to this new BDR who just, let's face it, they just don't have the same passion as the owner does. And I've always felt that I'm probably disagreeing with you slightly, and I think the founder needs to be involved in sales for quite a while because of that particular reason, because they have that passion and that great backstory. But I'm also totally in agreement with you in terms of the sales process. I've joined mature, well, I call them mature companies who have a lot of salespeople and they've been going a few years, and there really isn't a sales process at all. So that's a huge challenge. So are you providing that sales process structure itself? Is that what your offer?
Yeah, I help them ensure that they have it documented and that people are on the same page when it comes to the sales process. And Fergal, I don't think we disagree when it comes to like the owner being involved in sales because they should be. They should be involved in sales. They should be the expert in sales because in order for a business to succeed, the founder needs to be really good at sales. And how they're involved is just going to change. It absolutely needs to
Right.
change.
Okay. So it's how they actually get involved in sales just starts to evolve.
Exactly.
Okay. And listen, I'm going to pivot slightly because there's a lovely quote here, and I'm just going to read it out to you. Growth only comes when we're willing to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations. I love that quote from you. And the reason it resonated with me is that I've been in plenty of uncomfortable situations, particularly in the last, say, 5 months or so, because I've moved into essentially a founder role as well. So I was in permanent employee for corporates for many, many years, and then have decided to go out on my own. And there is that huge sense of being uncomfortable. You're out of your comfort zone for sure. And when I saw that, I said, "Yeah, I'm definitely growing for the better since I've made this move." And I also was thinking about confidence and self confidence because, again, I've seen your post on this as well, this topic, and it's really interesting. There's a difference between self confidence and confidence because I would have had the self confidence to go try something on my own, but there was no track record there. I hadn't done this before. So there wasn't the confidence that comes from having done something before. So for example, now I've gone through season one of my podcast and I have a level of confidence of doing the season two because I've already done season one. But the thing is, if I waited to have that confidence, I'd never have started. So you have to have a bit of self-confidence, don't you, to just get going. And I think your point about growth and that willing to put yourself out there into an uncomfortable position, that's that theme, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you when you think about doing something for the first time, you are terrified and you're like, I'm not sure I'm going to succeed at this, but I'm willing to try. And you're right, you have to have that level of self-confidence where you're like, I will figure this out. And if you have that, if you can foster that, especially at a young age where you just start trying things, that self-confidence just becomes a natural thing where you're like, "I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out." As long as you have that entrepreneurial mindset where you'll figure it out no matter what happens, that confidence will always be there, and you'll build it in different areas and different skill sets.
Do you think we have a society that encourages that that,
Oh,
that type of
man.
mindset?
Sometimes we do, and it's interesting because so my husband is a teacher, and I have children that are in grade school, and based on where they are and, like, their experiences in society today, I've seen it go both ways. So in different environments, it's encouraged, and it's like, "Fail, fail, try and fail. We're not going to punish you for failing. That means you're learning." And that's the type of environment we've always fostered where it's like, try something and fail. That's what we're gonna celebrate.
Do you mean you as parents?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
think that as a society as a whole is in some areas, they're encouraging it, and in other areas, they're not. In the corporate world versus the small business world, corporate is more so of get it right, do it right. And where in the smaller business world, we understand that we have to fail in order to iterate and shift and do things differently. So there's a little bit less flexibility in different environments for that mindset.
And I think you're a living embodiment of this because I've also read that you're an actor.
Yeah.
and which I wasn't expecting to read. So, like, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this came about because, like I've said previously, I like to force myself to be uncomfortable. And if I'm in a state where I'm kind of coasting and I'm doing well and things are going well, I know that I need to challenge myself a little bit. And so, the end of last year, a play locally, "The Death of a Salesman," became available, and I was like, I'm going to audition for that because it relates to what I do. It's the most iconic play of all time. I love the play itself and the whole story behind it. I relate to it as I'm sure all salespeople do. And so I decided to audition. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified, because I had not acted since high school. So
I mean, and
25.
and like this is real terror, right? This
Oh,
is not
yeah.
this is not
Like
pretend, right?
like
This
to
is
the
I am
point where
terrified here,
I'm just
shaking,
shaking,
right? Yeah,
right?
I can imagine, right?
Like,
Yeah,
almost nauseous going up there to
yeah, I
audition,
can
and
imagine.
I get up there, and I was so naive at the time too because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was just like, "I'm gonna do this because it scares me," and that to me was enough. I never thought I would get a role. Well, I end up getting a role, and I hesitated to
And
accept
then
the
it's even
role.
more terrifying. Now you've actually got the
Yeah.
role, right?
Right, because it was, like, the time commitment and
Mhm.
having to not only learn your lines, but then the interactions and being intimidated by these people who do this all the time, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, I need to step it up for these people to tell the story."
And sorry, have you had acting experience prior to this? You must have had something, right?
No,
Nothing.
just high
Are you
school.
serious?
Yeah.
Really? Oh
Just
wow.
high
Okay.
school, and I still am like, "What was I thinking?" And it was the best experience. It just ended on Sunday, and it was the best experience in that it was a smaller role for me, which was perfect debut to get into this. But what it did for me is I learned more from what the director was coaching everybody else on, and I'm feverishly taking notes about presence on stage and about storytelling and about collaboration. It was a collaboration I'd never ever experienced before. It was a type of teamwork that I honestly don't know that I've ever experienced in my life. And so it was incredible growth in only a few months' time, and it was unreal. Such an incredible experience.
Well, congratulations. It sounds brilliant. And you mentioned three things there that the storytelling, the collaboration, working as a team, and so on. But there must be some parallels here with sales that you've taken from the
Yes.
whole experience, right? It must have bled into what you do in the day job. We'll call it the day job.
Oh, absolutely, and I mean, anybody that knows the Death of a Salesman play, the main character in this is the salesman who is struggling mentally because he's done it his entire career, but he's not fulfilled at the end of his life. And he's trying to figure out, where did I go wrong? What happened? And so it just puts you in that mindset of ensuring that you as a high achiever and a driver does not end up in the same situation, and you can help the people that you are working with in sales to do the same thing, to keep things into perspective. But then also the storytelling aspect, like all the tweaks and the little things to get people to laugh and engage and to just be a part of something bigger than you.
And I'm going to have to call out another quote from you here. And this one is it leads on to that storytelling because you've said, you know who makes more money than the smartest person in the room? The one who tells the best story. And I think you've gone on from that to formalize that somewhat because you've got a three-step process, right? You've got this, what is it, relatability, tension, resolution. Is that, am I right? I'm going on the right track there in terms of how you then develop that and coach. You're probably coaching this storytelling skill. It's a skill, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's tied into pretty much everything that I do when I'm coaching or consulting in an organization. When we run workshops, there's always a piece of storytelling involved in it because in sales, like everybody knows, people relate to stories. They relate to either your story as a founder or your story as a salesperson with overcoming some problem. People relate to people, and the way they relate to people is through story. And in order to be engaging, you have to be able to tell good stories. And I wasn't always a good storyteller. You can ask my mom and my sister. So I used to go on and on and on and tell stories, and then all of a sudden they'd abruptly end. And my mom and my sister would stand there and they'd look at each other and then they would say, "Is
Is
that
she
the
finished
end?"
now? Right.
And then I would laugh and I'd go, "Yes, that's the
Okay.
end." So then they mandated that I start saying that's the end at the
Oh,
end of
so they were
every
coaching
story.
you how to tell
Yes,
stories. Okay. Right.
totally. From when I was a kid. So then I wrote a children's book. And at the very end of the children's book, I wrote, "And that's the end," just as a nod to my mom and my sister. But it really is a skill that you develop over your life. And there are formulas to follow and ways to best do that. But I think that the most important piece is to truly be able to be as much as this word is used, but to be authentic. And by being authentic, you're really dropping down your walls and you're able to share the things that truly matter to the audience, but then helps them relate to you so much more.
I mean, I've been in the industry probably more years than I want to actually admit to. And over those years, that there's lots of stories. They just, they develop throughout your career. And I found as I got more mature and got into more senior leadership roles, those stories were very helpful to me when I was trying to work with teams and do a little bit of coaching or mentoring and just working alongside the teams. But talk to me a little about, we're mentioning founders, right? So they're only starting out in their careers. Some of them are probably, they've had a few goes perhaps, but they may say to you, I don't have many stories. I'm fairly immature in terms of my career or even in age, right? They might be young and feel that they don't really have any stories. How do you address that?
It's funny. I had a girl one time take me out for coffee and kind of confide in me as a mentor to her. And she said, "You seem to have so many stories throughout your life, and people can relate to that so well. I don't have any stories. I'm kind of a privileged person who's grown up a certain way and all this stuff." And in that, she started sharing a story.
She was telling you a story. She was saying, I don't have a story.
Right.
Right.
And so I
Yeah.
sat there and I just let her talk. And then at the end of it, I said, "That in itself is a story." And I said, "There's going to be a lot of people that relate to that. There's also going to be a lot of people that admire that you're willing to say that and say that I don't have a story. Here's what I come from, and here's how I can help you." People relate to people. And when you're willing to be vulnerable enough with that and say, "I don't have a story," they will relate to you. And then the story will come from that.
And I think that's that authenticity you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Just being completely open and saying, actually, I don't think I have any stories. And then I met someone for coffee and I realized actually I do have a story. So here it is. And that it leads from there, right? Yeah, that's really interesting. You did mention it just very briefly, but I have to bring it up again. You're also a children's book author and you've had some great success there. Go on, tell me more about that.
Yeah. During COVID, as most business owners, things were shut down in some ways, and a lot of my events were canceled.
Right.
And where I struggled more than with those things was coaching my kids on how to change their mindset with not going to school and those things. And so, what I wanted to do was to teach them that no matter what is happening on the outside, you control what you're thinking about. You control what you give energy to. And so we started telling jokes. And so they started making up their own jokes that made no sense, like kid jokes, right?
Yeah.
And I started telling them jokes, making up jokes, and they got so cute. I was like, "Well, I'm going to start writing these down." So I started writing them down, and we were on the boat in the summer, and I just sat there writing one of the jokes they had just said, and I went, "This would make a really good book, and people would love to read this at this time. So maybe I'll just put it together and make it for family." And so I did that, but then it kind of blew up and it became something much bigger. And people were sending me videos and pictures of their kids loving these jokes and telling these jokes and then telling their own jokes. And it just became this really sweet community of people. So then we wrote 3 more books all about different lessons, trying to help with mindset and kindness. And it's been really just kind of a passion project, but we're now in 13 different countries and all 50 United States. So that was kind of a big celebration that my kids and we got to package up those and ship them, and they were so excited.
I mean, what an experience for them as well, to because they were essentially part of that, right?
Yes, and of course, they got little paychecks from,
Or did they,
participating in it.
they got some royalties, did they?
Yes, they did.
That's really good. Obviously, you've been writing, so you have written these children's books, but I think you said to me you're also writing a business book.
Yes,
That's obviously different, but
yes.
how different is it, and what challenges does that bring?
Yeah, really, it stems from my own experience in not only childhood, but through my corporate career as a woman in sales and as a woman in leadership, a mixture of the things that I have faced, but more in a relatable format where it's like, here's what you could do, or here's what I learned. And it's surrounding the term troublemaker. Women are typically encouraged to be more accommodating, less stir the pot, don't really challenge. And so when women do fall into that role and they're more of these entrepreneurial thinkers, these leaders, they're typically meant to feel or made to feel like they shouldn't be that way and kind of coached out of that, especially throughout grade school, high school, and then once you get into the workforce. And so it's kind of my gift to my younger self of here's what you should do differently. Don't let people tell you who you should be. And so it's really embracing a label that has been placed on you instead of fighting against it, really.
But that sounds like a terrific book. So how long is that gonna take now to develop and
Well,
get out there?
oh gosh, I hope this year. That's my hope. Still searching for because I've self-published all my other books. I have been on a track to identify the perfect publisher that I want to partner with on this.
So let me guess, you're treating this like a prospect that you gotta win, right? You're going after, right?
Yes. And I have like this dream one and I'm like, I want it to happen. Not sure how to make it happen, but I'm gonna figure it out.
That's really brilliant. It's interesting. You've got so many threads here, haven't you? We know we talked about the actor piece, the author piece. We're not forgetting about it, but there is that fractional sales leadership and coaching role that you're doing. I'm intrigued. You must see many sales leaders who are struggling in terms of they're being very reactive to how they manage their day. They're maybe drowning in admin. I see that a lot. They're rushing at everything. There's no calm about how they approach their jobs. Are you seeing that, and how are you coaching people around that?
Yeah, all the time. That's typically when I end up coming into an organization is when the founder is feeling that way and they feel like they've done their best to own their time and to figure that out, but nothing seems to be working. They can't quite get there where they're not burning the candle at both ends. And a lot of the time, it's really systematization and optimization of a lot of things that they already have working really well in their business and then also creating certain boundaries. Where I've seen a lot of small business owners struggle is the constant communication, not only with clients, but their teams. And so, because people work across different time zones now, it becomes even more difficult to not immediately respond. You have systems like Slack where your team on the West Coast is going to be messaging and the team on the East Coast is done and yet you're still responding and it's 8 p.m.
Mm.
and you've already set this boundary, but you're not respecting this boundary. And so coming into that and helping come alongside them and be like, this is what's going to work for you based on what you've said to me. How are we going to honor that? And really coming along as a partner to help them hold themselves accountable, but also bringing the team along with it and coming in as that fractional. You become part of that team, but you're also still a little bit removed from it so that the team looks more to you as this kind of collaborative coach where there's less friction. It's a
Probably a little less
really,
politics to play there, is there?
yeah.
It's because they know you're not there for the long haul. You've got a sense of urgency about you. You really are looking out for them. You want
Yeah.
to leave, I'll call it a legacy, you want to leave something really strong behind, right?
Yes, exactly. And usually I make sure that the owner is very communicative with the team on the why behind bringing me in and partnering with them. And
So
that
there's no
makes all the
confusion
difference.
about why is Angel here, right? So it's very clear why
Exactly.
you've come in. Okay.
Yep. And that makes all the difference. And really, it sets the owner or the founder up for success long term, whether or not we bring in a full time person behind me to take over as I leave, or I extend my contract based on what they need. Every founder wants it. Every founder wants what we implement and what we set up. It's just the time. How do we do this?
This is really interesting because I was hosting a workshop there for a client this week, and we hit upon exactly the same issue. And the framework I was presenting, it was around how to win new business from your existing clients. And they're just so busy that their day is just full. And I was asking one of the attendees, how do you essentially manage your time during the day? And his response was, I'm looking at my calendar and that's how I run my day. So there's basically back to back meetings. So that essentially funnels my time. That's how my time gets spent. I'm curious, you must have come across that too. And what's your remedy, if you like, if there is one for that type of scenario?
Yeah, as much as we rely on our calendars, we should never rely on them to control our priorities. We need to control our priorities, and we do that by inputting our priorities into our calendar. And so when I run into issues like that, there's always a team, a collaborative effort of what matters to this person, this person, this person. How do we put that in there before we start booking anything else? And I started this when I was in corporate and I was leading a bank. And I had certain priorities that I always honored. And I told my team I wanted them to do the exact same thing. And then in addition to that, it was when is our prospecting time? We're going to do that as a team at the same time. We always did those kinds of things, which we derived from the priorities that we had for the goals that we had. And that included the personal goals that we had. If that meant we needed to be at our kids' soccer game at 4:30, that was a priority that needed to be in the calendar. We weren't gonna overbook that time. And so we approach it kind of like that, but a lot of the time when I come into teams like that, that have their calendars completely booked out and say, "That's what runs my time," I also tell them, "I want you to be writing down every 15 to 30 minutes what you spent your time on in those 15 to 30 minutes." You do that for a week.
What reaction do you get to that now? I can imagine you might get a few raised eyebrows on that one.
Yes, and that even for myself, because doing that for myself, I'm like, "Wow, I waste a lot of time." Even though
Is
I'm
that so that's the
very
purpose, just to see
yeah.
where your time is going, right?
And you'll realize that, and then you'll realize where your priorities actually are lying, and that's where you can then say, "No, I don't need to be booked every minute of every day," but this helps give me that overarching view of how am I really spending my time? How should I be spending my time? And if the whole team does it, it creates the coolest conversation of everybody being really vulnerable. Like, "Oh yeah, I wasted 15 minutes here, 15 minutes here, didn't even realize, and I did that consistently over the week, and here's how we could repurpose that." It's very interesting.
And I also think people, and then nobody does this deliberately, but they're working hard, but
Yeah.
sometimes on the wrong thing.
Yes.
And there's an element of that in that 15-minute blocks that you're wasting.
Yes.
You never think of it as wasted time at the time because it's important to you at that very moment. You're working hard to get through all the things in your day that are important. But
Yes.
I guess if you look back over a week or so, you could easily spot, oh, actually, do you know what? That was a waste of time because I was working really hard on the wrong thing there.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
I think I think just trying to get that through to, I mean, I'm totally guilty of of it myself. And I do
Yes,
have
same
to,
here.
be kind of rigid in terms of how I approach the day. I personally use an Eisenhower matrix just to try and funnel the most important urgent things first. And I have found actually that's worked really well for me. And it's been able to stop me working basically hard on the wrong things. But
Yeah.
when I was in sales leadership roles, I used to begin at literally every day. I'd get in a little earlier than the day started. So if I could get half an hour done, and I would spend it exclusively just on the to-do
Mm-hmm.
to set myself up. I would never look at email until maybe 10 a.m. because the worst thing you do is flick up the laptop, look at your email. Before you know it, you're an hour into the email, aren't you? And you've lost your day, right? Now, it all sounds very easy. It certainly isn't. And I do have a lot of sympathy for people who have those back-to-back meetings because I had it myself. And in organizations, they're pushing this at you. It's not that you choose to have back-to-back meetings. You'd easily, duck out of those if you could. So you mentioned resilience earlier on, and I think there's a form of resilience here, isn't there? And there's courage here too, to be able to kind of own your diary again,
Mm-hmm.
particularly as a salesperson. That ability to just own your calendar and block out time, particularly for things like prospecting.
Yeah.
Because one of the big challenges that people say, I don't have enough time to prospect, buried in admin or in client meetings that are not sales oriented meetings. They're, firefighting or whatever it is. I'm curious about your sales process in terms of, if you're talking, certainly time management, I get it. Is there anything there about discovery? Once we get to a point where we're in discovery meetings, I'm guessing you must find a lot of nuggets there in discovery meetings that you're seeing people doing things that you could say, oh, you could definitely do that better and not be wasting a lot of additional time in discovery, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth that
Yeah.
happens in discovery. Honestly, based on my experience and what I have viewed in different organizations, it's a lot of lack of preparation going in. And so preparation beforehand, and this includes preparation before prospecting, preparation before discovery. You go in much more knowledgeable, much more pointed on what specifically you're going to be talking about. And not only does that make you look more professional, it also is so much more respectful of their time and your time. And it eliminates that back and forth that isn't necessary.
Yeah, I try to coach people on sales call plans, and it can almost seem overkill to sit down and spend maybe 20 minutes. I mean, for a 30-minute discovery call, to spend 20 minutes planning the call seems like overkill because you're spending nearly the same amount of time. But I found, once you follow a certain format for a sales call plan, and also bring your team in, because usually these discovery calls, it's not just yourself. There's usually someone else from your team in there. And to your point about it being respectful of the client's time as well, it's something I'd really encourage people to be doing, to be planning out the discovery calls and not treating them as, and I've seen this so often, people just literally turning up to I've got a discovery call in a minute's time, flicking on the Zoom call and you're in, and you're working off the top of your head. And then you find, as they leave the call, they haven't asked a couple of questions. So then it's another discovery call, and again, trying to waste the client's time. I'm just looking at the time here. I could talk all day. You have such a variety of skills and experiences that we could literally do another podcast on this. But could you just tell our listeners where they can get hold of you if they want to talk to you more, where they can engage with you, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is the first place. It's angelevenson.com. I run through my business, aka communications, for my workshops and things like that. But all of that is housed on my website. Most of my content is on LinkedIn. And it's also on a mixture of platforms, Instagram and TikTok. I like video. I do more writing than video.
Right. Okay. So we'll put those links in the podcast. And I just want to thank you again. It's been a blast talking to you. I really appreciate it. Lots of insights there, and looking forward to getting this podcast out. So thank you again, Angel.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Fergal.